I think one of the easiest ways to speedrun poverty in your 20s is spending money on things that make you look successful, instead of things that actually improve your life, because your 20s are weird financially. Most people finally start making some decent money, but they also start making terrible decisions with it, like lifestyle inflation, clubbing, and having a bunch of random subscriptions, super expensive habits, and financing stuff they actually can't afford. They're essentially trying to look rich before they've actually saved up some real money, which is basically adulthood DLC, now with monthly payments and anxiety. And the thing is, a lot of these decisions, they feel completely normal. Nobody wakes up and thinks, I am going to ruin my financial future today. It usually happens quite slowly, with like small spending habits that is repeated for years. And suddenly you're 30, you're making decent money, but somehow you're still financially stuck, which is terrifying to think about. Because some people, they make more money every single year and somehow get poorer every year at the same time. So in this video, I want to go through some of the worst ways people spend money in their 20s. And more importantly, what actually tends to compound instead. Number 6 is designer clothes and looking rich. I think one of the biggest traps in your 20s is trying to look successful before you actually are. And that can be with designer clothes, expensive brands, and overspending on fashion. Essentially boiled down to buying things mostly because other people will see them. And don't get me wrong, I like looking good too. But there's a massive difference between dressing well and financially cosplaying as a millionaire. Because I'm sure you've seen this exact guy before. He has a full designer fit, he has Gucci, he has expensive sneakers, a luxury watch, and then his card will decline on a random Tuesday when buying lunch. That's a brutal combo. And the worst part is that most of these purchases, they lose value almost immediately. You're basically burning money for temporary status points from people who don't even care that much. Meanwhile, investments compound, so does skills, businesses, and health. But the Balenciaga hoodie does not compound. And shockingly, the Gucci t-shirt does not gain value like the S&P 500. Now for number 5, that's nightlife and constant nights out. This one is dangerous because it feels completely normal when you're young. Everybody does it. It's Friday, somebody asks you, let's just go for one drink. And suddenly it's been 8 drinks and it's 3 AM. And you spend way too much money. You ate garbage and your sleep is now ruined for the next day. Half of your weekend has disappeared recovering, and then the same thing happens again week after week. And look, I'm not trying to sound morally superior here, I've done this too. And one thing I've realized as I gotten older is a lot of people don't even genuinely enjoy nightlife anymore. They just don't know what else to do socially. So everybody collectively pays $100 to stand in a loud room pretending this is peak human existence. Meanwhile, nobody can hear each other and the DJ is committing audio terrorism. Look, I'm not saying never go out. I'm saying if your entire lifestyle revolves around consumption and escape every weekend, your future self is gonna pay for it, quite literally. Now for number 4, it's cars you actually can't afford. This one destroys so many young guys financially, because cars are emotional. A lot of you guys probably have a dream car, and a car, it conveys status, some kind of identity, gives you validation, and gives you a lot of dopamine. And I think social media makes this way worse. Because when you see somebody having an AMG, or it might even be a motorcycle, sport bike, they have a luxury life seemingly because they're standing next to an expensive car. It subconsciously tells us something, it instills something in our head, that this guy probably has money and he's made it. And a lot of people, they are secretly financing themselves into cardiac arrest because they can just do monthly payments to normalize their bad decision. The car and motorcycle I have, I only bought them when I had enough money, when I had actually saved up enough to just straight up buy them. I think people should really start asking, can I afford this outright, instead of asking themselves, can I survive the monthly payment? Because these two are very different questions. One leads to freedom, while the other leads to eating pasta with ketchup to afford your BMW. A reliable used car, like the one I got, it's been fantastic. I've had financial peace, I've had low stress. I know this car is not gonna impress anyone, but that was not the goal. The goal was to get me from A to B and be reliable and be cheap. It's a small little Hyundai i10. Because I took my ego out of that decision. If you can resonate with that, you gotta realize that when you go to a car dealership, they are very good at selling to your ego, so be careful with that. Now for number 3, I have gambling and chasing quick money. Now this one is also becoming more and more normalized. Like betting on crypto, betting on sports, looking into get-rich-quick schemes, having casino apps that you go onto regularly. A lot of people think they are one lucky streak away from escaping reality, from making it big. And this is where gambling is really terrifying because it hijacks your brain. It convinces you that the next hit fixes everything, that the next trade is gonna change your life, and that the next bet is gonna save you. And it creates this constant emotional roller coaster, when normal investing feels really boring because it's gonna take years before you really see the compounding effects of those investments. But if you start gambling, and I do define crypto as gambling, it feels way more exciting, right? Because you can get some quick returns, but you can potentially lose a lot as well. So if you don't know a lot about crypto or any of these get-rich-quick schemes, gambling schemes, there's so much to lose. I think a lot of people are really trying to upsell the potential upside. Yeah, some people, they get success with it, but a lot of people, they fall on their ass and they spend years trying to recover from it. Personally, I have 71% of my savings invested into the S&P 500 and index funds, and they've returned well over $10,000 in the span of a couple of years. This is not impressive by any means, but because I'm just seeing it as a long-term game where the money is just staying there for 10 years, I just act as if I don't own that money and I just have left it there. I rarely check my stocks. Wealth is normally built slowly, which unfortunately is less exciting than turning $1,000 into emotional damage. Now for number 2, I have buying constant dopamine. And I think this is one that people massively underestimate. And here I'm talking about food deliveries, subscriptions, impulse purchases, convenience spending, and things that give you tiny dopamine hits all day long. Because individually, none of these purchases feel inherently dangerous. Some of these people might say, it's only $10. It's only another subscription. It's only delivery. But stacked together, it suddenly becomes this financial leak that leaks everywhere. And the deeper problem is, you start training yourself to constantly buy comfort. I'd recommend keeping a 30-day list for anything that's not daily essentials before you actually buy them, and then you can consider, do I actually need this now? Would this actually benefit my life in any significant way? Because modern life has basically become, would you like to financially inconvenience yourself for temporary dopamine? And most people keep clicking yes. Now for the final one, number 1, I'd say it's not investing in yourself. And I genuinely think this is the biggest mistake you can make in your 20s. Because your 20s are your highest leverage decade. This is the easiest period to build high-level skills that last you for a lifetime, work on your health so you have a solid foundation for your 30s, 40s, and 50s, build the skill of discipline, learn how to build income, build some confidence, and build a lot of momentum. And a lot of people spend this decade just having fun and consuming a lot instead of building something. They'll spend thousands on nightlife, on clothes, on random garbage, but hesitate to spend money on books, on courses, on coaching, on actually learning something very valuable, which I think is absolutely crazy, because the things that changed my life the most were the skills I learned along the way, the books I bought, some of the coaching courses I've attended, some of the experience I've gotten from attending these courses and from actually learning these skills and applying what I read in books, and from actually just building some creative projects and trying stuff. This stuff compounds very, very hard. And honestly, the older I get, the more I realize your 20s are mostly a leverage building decade. The goal here isn't to look rich, the goal is to build a life that eventually gives you the freedom to do a lot of things you couldn't do when you were younger, that you didn't have the means to. Because eventually the guy who invested in himself becomes the guy everybody else suddenly asks for advice, even though they laughed at him 3 years earlier. One thing I noticed is, most bad financial decisions don't feel catastrophic in the moment. They feel completely normal, they feel small, harmless, which is why they're dangerous, because the gap between people financially usually isn't created by one giant decision. It's created by repeated habits, repeated spending, priorities, and behaviors. And your 20s compound way harder than people think. So I'm not saying never enjoy your life, I'm saying be careful what kind of life you're slowly building, because eventually your spending habits become your future. Which sounds deep, but it's also just a very complicated way of saying stop buying dumb stuff.